I am a veteran of 3 foreign wars. I was a U.S. Army paratrooper and got out of the military, started several businesses until I found my niche, my calling, which is precious metals. And I love the history, I love the coins. I love the stream of history that we're in right now, where so much change going on. Everything that I've built is able to help people because we are in a monumental historical shift, like the likes of which you've never seen. And especially since 1971, there is so much change on the horizon, regardless of the election, anything that goes on with politics. And I love what we've built. And we sponsor shows like this. We have an amazing base of clientele that are loyal to us. Most of the people that buy from me, they come back, they upgrade. I have very few cancellations. It's really amazing because we went to the source. We're not the big guy. And we're not exactly the smallest guy, but we're somewhere in the middle, and I just love what we do. And, of course, I'm in alternative media as well. So
who do you do podcasts with?
Well, I've got a podcast with the legendary Don Jeffries, who wrote Hidden History, and Billy Ray Valentine of the Infinite Fringe podcast. We do a show every week called America Unplugged.
Nice.
And we've been doing that. We're on episode, I think, 166. We do it once a week. And then I have a radio show I've been doing for the last 7 years or so, which is called the Arterburn Radio Transmission. And a little bit different. I started out in conservative talk radio, and I since long ago crossed the Rubicon into the conspiracy theory of history. And that's fine. I like what I've been labeled. I have the mark somewhere, I'm sure. But I do that, and I have a podcast called Paratruther because I was a paratrooper. And Chris Graves, who you've had on, is one of the researchers I have there. And one of my good friends I grew up with, who's a scientist, we call him Mr. Anderson, like the Matrix.
Mr. Anderson.
Mm-hmm,
I love that. Well, you're doing great work. Billy Ray has been on my show a couple times. We love him very much. He's always been he's always had his opinions on Trump, and I always appreciated them, even if maybe at the time I didn't agree with them at the time, and then later on I'm like, well, he was right.
Right.
He's been calling out a lot of stuff. What is your thoughts on the upcoming election? Are you black pilled? Do you have hope for the future? Like, what are your thoughts?
I will just say, for the record, Billy Ray Valentine, one of the most genuine human beings
He's great.
on the face of the earth.
He's great.
He's been my friend for many years in alternative media, and he loves the free exchange of ideas. We don't agree on everything, but I just talked to him today.
I think those are better shows.
Yes, we have differing opinions on some things, but he is right on so much. In the Cambridge Analytica aspect of the right wing and the controlled op, very, very smart guy. So love Billy.
Oh, I forgot about Cambridge Analytica.
Yes, Steve Bannon.
And did that play into this election, do you think?
I think it did. I mean, it's a continuation of that. And, of course, I find myself siding with so much of it, when they did the 5,000 data points and they said, well, people want to hear build that wall. I was one of them, build the wall, lock her up. These are, phrases that were gleaned out all that data mining that's what they want to hear.
Oh, my God.
And we want to hear it.
Crazy.
Right?
Yeah. They just know how to talk to us.
Yes.
They know what we want to hear, and they can market right to us. But again, like you said, you do want the wall.
Well, at this point, I mean, I've put more nuanced on it. Walls keep people in too.
Well put.
When I ran for Congress 10 years ago, I thought, well, let's bring the troops from South Korea and put them in South Texas. And I'm not for a militarized zone, but I think we ought to have some sort of like Marshall Plan like we did in Europe, especially because you have these, NGOs and, these billionaires that are funding people and incentivizing. Then we have the welfare states, the magnets bringing them here. We need something that is humanitarian, a way to process people that are legitimately political refugees or need help, and all. We have to have that. But we have to have a rule of law too. I mean, what you have now is just absolute chaos, and it's on purpose to psychologically break you,
of course,
to make you look like a pitiful giant. You're supposed to be guarding the borders of Ukraine, but you can't guard the borders of your own country. I mean, it's just
demoralization.
Ridiculous. Demoralization is what it's all about. So I'm not black-pilled. But the left-right paradigm is strong in this country, and we see the tribalism of it, and I think it's unhealthy. Again, the two parties, the duopoly, are funded by the same people. You wonder, Kamala Harris ran left of the Communist Manifesto on her tax plan, but people never asked in the media, well, how is she getting funded by the world's richest people? Then she is. They love the tax plan. What does that tell you about the paradigm that we have set up in our own minds about, oh, well, there's capitalism versus socialism. That's not the case. Well, you guys know that's the secret behind the conspiracy theory of history, is that it's mostly a non-organic, self-funding snake eating its own tail.
100%,
like that's what we're inside.
all of it.
So.
And again, I've said this on the show. It's just, she was the perfect candidate to run against Trump again. Just like John, what's his face again?
McCain.
John McCain against Obama. You couldn't have picked a better person for Obama, a charismatic black closeted gay man, to run against an old crotchety angry white guy that everyone was over. He reminded everybody, he looks like Dick Cheney, acts like Dick Cheney. Everyone was over Dick Cheney. Just walk him right into the White House.
Nobody that knew anything about politics thought John McCain would win in 2008. Nobody.
Yeah.
And it's just the fall guy. And of course, he was on the heels of, and of course, Barack Obama ran on ending the wars. He did not, but that's what he ran on. And people were sick and tired of the Iraq War, which I was a part of, and winding down Afghanistan. And John McCain, what did he run? He was running on the surge, and we got to do. Remember the Beach Boys parody about bomb Iran. Remember that? That's what I mean. This is a warmonger that you up against a so-called peace candidate. I mean, and that was more slick, and he could read a teleprompter a lot better than John McCain. It was just a setup, absolutely.
Can I ask you, Tony, really quickly? Now? I've heard it said that, and I believe me, this is no defense of John McCain. John McCain is a warmonger, like you said, and probably my least favorite Republican candidate of the last 20 years, probably.
But
I mean, they're contenders, sure, but was he right about, because he'd always been the one to say from the very beginning that they could not win that war without a massive escalation of troops over there. Now, would you say that they were sabotaged and undercut, and they could have done the job with what they had?
What do you mean by what war?
Iraq. Like, could that have been done without just a massive inflow? Like he always said, we'd have to be there 100 years to win that war. He'd said
That's
it from
the way
beginning.
he thought. It's the way.
Do you believe that though? Do you think he was right? Like, or could it have been won in any sense that we would identify as winning?
I think it's very similar to the Matthew Broderick film War Games, with the only way to win is not to play. You cannot win that war. It's an unwinnable war. Now you can stabilize it, you can control it. But the Middle East, in a lot of ways, and I lived there and fought in wars there, the Middle East it disguises itself as a scepter. Like, you'd be a king, you pick up the scepter, you rule, but it's a serpent and it bites you. And that's the way. I wrote that years ago in a commentary on Syria, and it comes back to me anytime I think about, can you make it work there? And can you build something? No. The answer is no. You can make short-term damage. You can certainly topple an army, but you don't belong there. And the British learned it. I mean, Alexander the Great learned it. Everybody learns it. Eventually, you don't rule. It's an entity unto itself. And John McCain, he coined the term rogue state rollback. That's what they were. That was the 7 countries in 5 years. Wesley Clark, 9/12/2001.
Yeah.
He was part of that. It's just his viewpoint was that we botched it. Rumsfeld thought it was 50,000 troops, we could hold it. I was part of that. And he's like, well, we'll just pull I remember when we got to Mosul the day that the Republican Guard fell, and we took over their barracks. And I was, following. We had the tanks there. We had the Abrams tanks. I thought, thank God the tanks are here. And then they rolled out all the tanks. They left the tanks. They put all the heavy equipment, started rolling that out. And I said, this is really stupid. And of course, that's when 6 months later is when the real insurgency had time for. We were getting people from Afghanistan, the Mujahideen, Saddam loyalists, and then people pouring in from Syria. They were coming from all over to fight the jihad, and of course they were funded by intelligence agencies and other things.
Oh, that gets into the whole real question is, if you're a warmonger, nothing gets your nipples harder than the thought of a 100-year war. The Vietnam was not about winning it. It was about, first of all, taking over the poppy fields. Nobody talks about that. We all talk about that in Afghanistan. Nobody talks about that in Vietnam, that we just wanted their poppy fields, and that all the rules of war was to extend the war. So could it be won? Well, I personally would say it was never meant to be won. It was meant to extend it and cash these checks constantly for these military industrial complex companies who basically run our government.
At what level do you think that's decided? Because we talked about a couple weeks ago in Broken Sim, that McNamara documentary, Fog of War.
Yes.
And if you believe him, if you take the things he says at face value, then he clearly wasn't in on what you just described. He thought that he was doing the right thing and they were trying to win that war. Do you believe him when he says that? And then what does that imply about where those decisions are made? And I'm asking anybody.
For me personally, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, that was a different time in government, right? And we were just coming off the JFK assassination, right?
Yeah. McNamara was Secretary of Defense for JFK, and I believe before that he was in the private sector. He was CEO of Ford Motor Company, I believe.
So, I mean, like, it could be a different time where maybe we were just starting to see this kind of Nazi regime to take over the government. So maybe it could be that they were naive enough to believe that. I could be wrong. I do think there was a time when, maybe the corruption wasn't as thick and they had to slow roll it out because people had a little bit more integrity back then, or a little more focus. There weren't TikTok and a million different things going on that you were focusing on all these other things. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that they misjudged the grand chessboard, but in a way, people like McNamara were useful tools for the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very much a statistician, like Rumsfeldian. Rumsfeld,
Totally.
They are like the same person. Like if you watch the same guy who did the documentary on McNamara did one on Rumsfeld.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen
that?
that?
Absolutely. It's incredible. Yeah.
But Rumsfeld had a lot less depth, I thought. Even I
agree. Yeah, he's less introspective. Yeah.
Very much.
You don't think Rumsfeld is one of these lizards?
Well,
maybe not literally, but
I don't even know if he's smart enough to be a lizard.
I think they just use certain people.
Yeah.
Again, Rumsfeld brought you aspartame. The reason that you get it was putting cancer into laboratory animals, and he said, "Well, thank God they're not laboratory animals. Let's put it in the diet soda." So. That's he's one of the first people to really break through that line. But he was in, I watched that movie Vice with Christian Bale where he plays Dick Cheney. The Rumsfeld character. Steve Carell plays Rumsfeld. I thought he captured it really well.
Very well. Yeah.
Just that he's just kind of and there's a great scene in there in this line of logic where the Dick Cheney character asks Rumsfeld. He goes, "What do we believe?" And it makes Rumsfeld laugh, like just burst out laughing. What do we believe? It was just so absurd to him. So they're not really that it's the absence of ideology in them that I think that makes them even more dangerous.
Manipulable.
It's more like they seek power for its own sake. Like the thing in and of itself for them is the job. Whereas like even everybody in this room would believe something. We would want a certain outcome. I don't know that, maybe.
When he gives the speech on the trillions of dollars missing, do you think he legit is like giving a real press conference that he doesn't have any clue what's happening in the next day?
Now that I do not believe. I do believe he knew exactly where it was.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion. I think that some level, there has to be some complicit behavior on behalf of those who appear to rule. But I don't think that he was making calling all the shots on something like 9/11. If that's what, again, if we really drill down, I don't believe that. But somebody like McNamara too. I mean, you watch the documentaries. He's talking about meeting the head of the Vietnamese government, and they're saying, "Why did you think that you could come in here and our mortal enemy is the Chinese? You thought the Chinese were going to link up with us and create a hegemonic, dominant communist state?"
I remember hearing that for the first time, and it blew my mind. I go, "Oh, dude!"
It sounds like it blew his mind.
Why would it? But why would it? Because why are you so uncurious to history?
Yeah,
it's just it's an absolute failing on the behalf of not only our ruling class has an absence in historical background. They really don't know what's going on. Like if the media right now knew, I mean, I'm an amateur historian. I like geopolitics. I studied the Cold War and things. I go back and look at what we're doing now. Like the British-made and American-made missiles that are being authorized by both governments, fired out of Ukraine into Russian sovereign territory is absolutely insane. That's something we would have never done. That's never been done where a sovereign state that held nuclear weapons was attacked by another indirectly, but from another sovereign
But you
state.
don't find that could, and I'm not pushing back. I'm just asking in honesty. You don't think that's purposeful? Like it's done to
Yes.
kick off World War III?
It's meant to, I think, continue to escalate, where even the next administration possibly wouldn't have the ability to stop it.
That's what I
like
think
certain
it is.
domino effects of things that have to go on in retaliation for this. The way that like the DEFCON, the defense condition, it has to be raised. That's we do that ourselves. And so I look at that and I just think if these people that are doing commentary right now, if they knew anything, they would be absolutely alarmed. That's something that's never happened. We're in completely uncharted waters right now.
And there just seems to be nobody on a national level, meaning like within these legacy media, that is pushing back on any of this. It only seems to be even Piers Morgan, who seems to be relegated to a YouTube show, right?
Yeah, it's like it airs in Australia and on YouTube, basically. That's it. Yeah.
So even that is in America isn't even a legacy show, which is why he's allowed to talk about everything he talks about. You know, it's like
except a few things which he had to censor a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, because he's threatening with getting sued, right?
Yeah.
But even what's the name of the Israeli newspaper? Hertza?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
HAATZ. I signed up for a year-long subscription to them because they're the only ones out there telling the truth. Like they're out there like, and Netanyahu's trying to nip Haaretz.
Yeah, it's spelled HAARETZ. I don't know how to say it,
but it's like, who's pushing back on this on a national level to the point where you're like you got to know what's coming. And it's just absolutely insanity to me that they want World War III.
They do.
And it's all money grab. Or is it a biblical stuff? I don't even know. It's
all of it. All the above.
Lindsey Graham, we should, if this World War III goes up, we should storm the Capitol and throw him right into the middle of this fucking bullshit.
Strap him to a
him
rocket,
and his
dude.
Queenie ass. He gets so queenie when he starts talking about war.
He's very precious.
He's just like, we just gotta nuke them.
Those high school bullies that bullied him have cost America so many lives. I mean, you really can't overestimate. Because I guarantee you, he got pushed, and it's just revenge
I just
for high
think
school.
they've allowed
His
him
whole
to
thing.
be the debaucherous person he wants to be behind closed doors. They fed him
You think-
everything the demon needs to eat.
His
sucks.
His
He
soul
sucks.
is terrifying. I mean, you can just read the fear in
Yes.
that man. That is fear. That's what fear looks like, ladies and gentlemen. That's the essence of it, and it creates death. I mean, he's been espousing just massive military operations my entire life. I remember the Syrian conflict, and he was running for president. And he said, "We got to put 200,000 troops in, or they're going to kill us all." Like he thought they were. I mean, I go, in what way are they going to get here and project power? What are you on? And again, is it about money? Is it about power? Or is it something I think it's deeper. I think there's something else flowing through the reality right now. These people are this is their moment, though.
Okay, but you guys say World War III is going to happen, right? And this one I think sounds real where nukes aren't real. Because if World War III is real and they want it to happen, that means they die too. I mean, what's the solution
That is
to
the
it?
interesting thing.
I don't
What's
think
the
they want
solution? Like, I mean, if we go to World War III, we all know we die, right? The nuke here, nuke there, we're done.
I don't think they want. World War III.
Dude, I mean, so we were just talking in between the show about the Fox News lady who died. She got a heart attack live on air, and now turbo cancer got her. So it's like bang bang, right? So you go take a look at the lady who worked at YouTube, who was just straight up censoring any vaccine hesitancy stuff, and then she dies of turbo cancer. So it's like they don't care. I mean, they must not really care. They must really just be like, these are your marching orders. That's the question. Do you think Lindsey Graham is generally in fear of Syrians coming here? Or is he told, tell them they're going to come here. If we don't stop them there, they're going to come here. And we need to have troops over there. And you need to push that because we have this video of you doing some unholy shit.
It's probably a combination of a lot of things. But you know, I'm wearing the sign and the seal of Alexander the Great. This is the Vergina sun.
I love that.
It's kind of like the alchemical symbol for gold, because the sun is gold and the silver is the moon. But it reminds me of Alexander the Great. They would sacrifice to the god Phobos, which is the god of fear. That's what they would do before they went into battle. So it's something along those lines. It's very spiritual, in my opinion. There's something running. Maybe they don't even understand. But if you read stuff like Barbara Tuchman wrote a book. JFK was actually reading it during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's called The Guns of August. It was about the lead up to World War I. And you know those militaries, like they had the von Schlieffen plan, which was drawn up by Germany for years and years, and then rewritten. Like we go through Belgium, this is how we topple France. We'll put everything on the rail line. Like they were drawing up the battle plans. France had a battle plan. All these treaties that were all built in like tripwires. And so once the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated, and then of course there was Austria and Serbia, and they started going at. The alliances kicked in and everything fell like a domino. And if you actually look into the history, the Kaiser, who was head of Germany, he tried to stop it. And he's like on the phone, he's on the he's trying to get people to stop, and he's crying because he can't stop it. He knows what's coming. And these statesmen, once they and by the way, those statesmen were 100 times smarter than the ones we have now. They were classically trained, could speak several languages, understood about realpolitik, all this stuff. I don't even know the modern diplomats knew what I just said.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Kaiser just broke down, and he was just bawling like he couldn't stop the war. I don't know. In my heart, I think they're bloodthirsty in so many ways. I think because there's been no consequence for their being so averse for war. But there always is. There's always a consequence for for
What was the
wanting
name of
war.
that book?
It's called The Guns of August. It was written by a
Guns of
woman
August.
named Barbara Tuchman. Very excellent, because it talks about all the, that's World War I was really when we went off the gold standard. The dynasties, the monarchies started to fall. But those were bankers' wars, Sam. I mean, that kind of goes back to the Carnegies. About 1910, they had the first foundation set up by. The robber barons, and they said, well, how do we fundamentally change society? And they said, well, you need a war. And then so their next question was, well, how do we get into one? And that's why you got the Federal Reserve. And of course, Federal Reserve was Christmas 1913, and then by the Guns of August is 1914.
Another book recommended by Elon Musk, The Guns of August.
Yeah, I read that
I just found
20
it.
plus years ago. It's a great book.
Yeah, it's just like, how deep does a rabbit hole go? Like, for every layer you think, there's a basement below that, right? Of another layer, then another layer, then another layer, and it just gets crazy to me. It's just so deep.